Accra was glowing that morning. The sun felt gentle, the kind of warmth that makes everything look softer and more hopeful. The wedding venue was filled with white flowers, gold chairs, and quiet excitement. Soft music played in the background while cameras moved around, catching every smile, every laugh, every little moment meant to be remembered forever. Ebony Courting stood in front of the mirror, her hands slightly shaking as she adjusted her veil. She was 28, and she had never felt more sure about anything in her life. Her wedding gown hugged her perfectly, simple but elegant, just how she liked it. When she looked at herself, she smiled. Today, she believed, was the reward for every hard year, every sacrifice, every prayer she had whispered at night. Outside, family and friends filled the seats. Some had traveled from far, others had watched her grow up. Her mother wiped away happy tears. Her aunties whispered about how beautiful she looked. Phones were already raised, ready to record the moment she would walk down the aisle. Everyone agreed on one thing: this was a perfect day. When the music changed, Ebony took a deep breath and stepped forward. Each step felt like a dream. She saw familiar faces smiling back at her, cheering her silently. Her heart was full, beating fast with joy and nervous excitement. She thought about the future: a home, laughter, shared dreams, and quiet evenings that felt safe. Then she reached the front and saw Kojo Mensah. He stood tall in his suit, looking polished and confident. At first glance, he looked like the man she loved. But when their eyes met, something felt off. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It was tight, almost forced, like he was holding something back. Ebony noticed it, but she pushed the feeling away. This is just nerves, she told herself. Big day nerves. Kojo took her hand. His grip was firm, colder than she expected. Cameras flashed. The crowd smiled. Music faded slightly, making space for the ceremony to begin. Ebony's heart was still hopeful. She squeezed his hand gently, trying to ground herself in the moment. She looked around and thought, I am lucky. I am loved. I am finally here. She had no idea that this perfect day, the one meant for love, was about to change her life forever. The officiant was just about to speak when Kojo suddenly stepped forward. He reached for the microphone with a quick, confident move, the kind that made people think he was about to say something romantic. A few guests smiled, expecting a sweet surprise. Someone in the crowd even whispered, "Ah, he's nervous." Kojo cleared his throat. Then he laughed. It wasn't a shy laugh. It was loud, uncomfortable. The sound cut through the room, and the smiles slowly faded. Ebony turned her head toward him, confused, still holding his hand. She waited for the joke to end. Didn't. I need to be honest today, Kojo said, his voice calm but cruel. I can't marry someone like her. He tilted his head toward Ebony, like she was a problem he was finally tired of hiding. A quiet wave of shock moved through the guests. She's too needy, he continued, pacing slightly. Always wants reassurance. Always wants praise. Honestly, it's exhausting. Few people shifted in their seats. Ebony felt her chest tighten, but she still said nothing. Kojo smiled again, this time wider. And let's be real, he added, laughing lightly. She's lucky I even chose her. I did her a favor. The words landed like stones. Phones lowered. Someone gasped. Her mother stood up halfway, then froze. Ebony's ears rang as if the room had suddenly filled with noise and silence at the same time. She stared at Kojo, waiting for him to stop, to say he was joking, to say anything that would make this make sense. But he wasn't done. So, he said, tapping the microphone, there will be no vows today. No marriage. This wedding is cancelled. For a second no one breathed. Then the whispers exploded. Confusion. Disbelief. Some guests looked away, embarrassed to witness something so cruel. Others stared openly, unable to believe what they were hearing. Ebony couldn't move. Her hands felt numb. Her mouth was dry. It was like her body had turned to stone while her heart shattered loudly inside her chest. This was supposed to be the safest moment of her life. Instead, it became the most painful. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her. Pity, curiosity, judgment, all at once. She wanted to scream. She wanted to disappear. But no sound came out. Kojo stood there, holding the microphone, looking proud of himself, and Ebony stood beside him in her wedding dress, humiliated in front of the world, realizing the man she loved had chosen to break her in public. The room waited for Ebony to react. Everyone expected something, tears, anger, a scream, anything. But she said nothing. Her lips stayed closed. Her face didn't break. She stood there in her wedding dress, breathing slowly, as if she was the only calm thing left in the room. Kojo watched her closely. He smirked when she didn't respond. In his mind, her silence meant he had won. He thought he had crushed her so completely that she didn't even have words left. He straightened his shoulders, enjoying the power of the moment. Whispers moved through the crowd like wind. People leaned toward each other, confused and uncomfortable. "Is she okay?" someone murmured. "Why isn't she saying anything?" another asked. A few guests shook their heads, already judging her silence as weakness. Ebony heard it all, but it felt far away. Her heart was still racing, but her mind had gone strangely clear. It was as if everything slowed down inside her. The pain was real, sharp and heavy, but it didn't control her. Her mother stepped closer and gently took her hand. The touch was warm and steady, grounding her. Her mother didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. "I'm here. You're not alone." Ebony squeezed her hand back. Inside, something shifted. She realized that crying would give him what he wanted. Screaming would turn her into the story he planned. Begging would only feed his ego. Kojo wanted a reaction. He wanted proof that he had power over her. She decided he wouldn't get it. Behind her calm face, her thoughts were moving fast. She remembered every sacrifice she had made, every bill she had paid, every time she had supported him quietly while he smiled in public. She remembered whose name was on the contracts, whose money had built this moment. For the first time since he grabbed the microphone, she saw him clearly, not as the man she loved, but as someone afraid of her strength. The whispers grew louder. The silence stretched. Kojo shifted his weight, suddenly unsure. He expected her to fall apart. Instead, she stood tall, her head high, her eyes steady. Ebony took another slow breath. This was not the end of her story. This was the moment she chose herself. And while everyone else mistook her silence for weakness, Ebony knew the truth. She was preparing to take back everything he thought he had taken from her. After what felt like a lifetime, Ebony finally stepped forward. The room grew quiet again, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. Kojo still held the microphone, looking proud, waiting for tears or begging. Instead, Ebony reached out calmly and took the mic from his hand. There was no struggle, no anger, just control. Her voice was soft, but it carried. "Thank you all for coming," she said, looking around the room. "Some of you traveled far. Some of you have known me my whole life. I don't take that lightly." People leaned in. Phones slowly rose again, but this time not for drama, for respect. "I know today didn't turn out the way we expected," Ebony continued. "But I won't let this moment be remembered only for pain." She paused, took a breath and smiled gently. "Today will still mean something." Kojo laughed under his breath, thinking she was trying to save face. He didn't realize she was taking control. "This event will continue," she said clearly. "Not as a wedding, but as a celebration." She looked down at her dress, then back up. "A celebration of truth. A celebration of freedom." A soft murmur moved through the crowd. Some guests nodded. Others smiled through tears. Ebony turned slightly toward Kojo. Her tone didn't change. "Kojo, you've said what you needed to say. Now this space needs peace." For the first time he looked unsure. "What are you doing?" he whispered. She didn't answer him. She raised her hand and signaled calmly toward the side of the stage. Security, who had been standing quietly, stepped closer. Ebony spoke clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This event is under my name," she said. "I'm asking him to leave." Gasps filled the room again, but this time they carried something different. Kojo tried to protest. "You can't," he started, but the guards were already beside him. The microphone was no longer his weapon. Ebony stayed still as he was guided away. She didn't watch him struggle. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. Her peace was louder than his confusion. When he was gone, she faced the crowd once more. "If you choose to stay," she said warmly, "you're welcome to eat, talk, dance, and celebrate new beginnings." Applause broke out slowly, then all at once. Ebony stepped back, her heart steady, her head high. Without raising her voice, she had ended his power and reclaimed her moment. For a second the room felt frozen. Then someone clapped. It was slow at first. One pair of hands. Then another. And another. Soon the sound grew louder, stronger, filling the space with something Ebony hadn't felt since the morning. Support. People stood up. Some smiled through tears. Others nodded with deep respect. The applause wasn't just for her words. It was for her strength. Kojo's face changed. The confidence he had walked in with vanished. His smile cracked. His eyes moved around the room, searching for someone, anyone, to agree with him. But no one did. The crowd that once came to celebrate him now watched in silence as security gently but firmly guided him toward the exit. "This is a misunderstanding," he muttered. "You don't know the full story." His voice sounded small now, lost under the applause. Ebony didn't look back. As Kojo was escorted away, the large screens at the side of the venue lit up. At first, people thought it was part of the decoration. Then names appeared. Documents. Receipts. Clear and simple. Ebony courting. Her name was on everything. The venue contract, the catering agreement, the live stream booking. Even the startup funding documents that supported Kojo's lifestyle were displayed carefully, with sensitive details hidden but ownership clear. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was factual. The room buzzed. People leaned forward. Phones recorded again, but this time the tone had changed. This wasn't gossip. This was truth. Heads turned toward Ebony with new understanding. Whispers shifted from pity to admiration. "So it was her all along," someone said quietly. Kojo stopped walking. He turned, eyes wide. Panic spread across his face as he realized what was happening. The power he thought he had built in minutes was dissolving in seconds. "Turn that off," he shouted. But it was too late. The truth had already landed. Security continued to escort him out, and the doors closed behind him with a soft final sound. Not a slam. Just an ending. Inside, the energy transformed completely. Guests who once looked uncomfortable now stood taller. Some clapped again. Others shook their heads in disbelief at Kojo's cruelty. Ebony remained calm, her hands steady. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't insulted him. She simply let the truth speak. And in that moment public opinion flipped. The man who tried to humiliate her walked out alone. The woman he tried to break stood surrounded by respect. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to normal for everyone else. But for Kojo, nothing was the same. In Tima, his name began to sound different when people said it. The same words he once spoke with pride were now followed by silence. Sponsors stopped calling. Meetings were cancelled without explanation. Emails went unanswered. The doors that once opened easily for him began to close, one by one. People hadn't forgotten. The video of that day didn't disappear. It moved quietly from phone to phone, from office to office. Not because Ebony shared it, she didn't, but because people remembered his words. Pathetic. Lucky I chose her. The cruelty stayed with them, and no one wanted their brand, their company, or their reputation linked to that kind of man. Friends became distant. Some stopped inviting him out. Others avoided his calls. The same people who once laughed at his jokes now looked uncomfortable around him. He tried to explain himself, to say it was taken out of context, that emotions were high. But excuses sounded weak when compared to what everyone had seen and heard. Kojo felt smaller every day. Meanwhile, Ebony said nothing. No interviews. No long posts. No public statements. She didn't defend herself or attack him. She went back to her life quietly, letting time do what shouting never could. People noticed that too. They noticed how she didn't chase sympathy, how she didn't need revenge. Her silence felt intentional, powerful. While Kojo tried to control the story, Ebony let her dignity speak for her. In quiet ways, her life moved forward. She returned to work. She focused on herself. She leaned on her family and healed away from cameras. Those who truly mattered reached out to her with respect, not pity. In Tima, Kojo struggled to rebuild what he destroyed. But trust is harder to earn than attention. And once respect is lost publicly, it doesn't return easily. Ebony never celebrated his fall. She didn't need to. Her calm response, her grace, and her refusal to become bitter made her stronger than any insult he ever threw at her. Without saying a single word, she showed the world the difference between power and character. And in the end, it wasn't her silence that made her forgettable. It was his behavior that made him impossible to defend. Ebony didn't disappear after everything that happened. She just changed her environment. She moved to Cape Coast quietly, choosing the calm of the ocean over noise and questions. The air felt lighter there. Mornings began with long walks by the sea, waves crashing softly as if reminding her to breathe again. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't performing for anyone. She was just living. Healing didn't come all at once. Some days were still heavy. Some memories still hurt. But little by little, she started to feel like herself again. Not the version someone tried to shrink, but the woman she had always been underneath. In Cape Coast, she launched her own company. This time, her name was front and center. No hiding. No staying in the background to protect someone else's ego. She built carefully, confidently, using everything she had learned. Clients respected her. Partners listened. Her work spoke for itself. The success followed naturally. Financially, she grew stronger. Emotionally, she felt clearer. She surrounded herself with people who didn't feel threatened by her light. Friends who celebrated her wins without jealousy. Mentors who reminded her that she never needed permission to be great. People started to notice her glow. It wasn't just about money or success. It was in the way she smiled again, the way she spoke with calm confidence, the way she said no without guilt and yes without fear. She had learned something powerful. Strength doesn't need revenge. She didn't wish Kojo harm. She didn't track his failures. She didn't need closure from him. Her boundary was simple and strong, no access. Cape Coast became her reset, a place where her past didn't define her, and her future felt open again. She decorated her space the way she liked. She worked on her own schedule. She rested without explaining herself. Sometimes people asked how she stayed so calm after what she went through. Ebony would smile softly and say, "Peace is expensive. I protect it." Her glow-up wasn't loud. It was steady. And it proved that the best response to betrayal isn't bitterness. It's becoming so whole that the past no longer has power over you. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm that felt peaceful and real. Ebony was no longer waking up with pain in her chest. She was building, growing, laughing again. The past no longer followed her into every room. One evening, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Kojo. The words were long, careful, apologetic. He said he had made a mistake. He said he was under pressure. He said he never meant to hurt her the way he did. He talked about memories, about love, about how he wished he could go back and change that day. Ebony read the message once. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel sadness. She felt distance. Not the cold kind, the healed kind. She placed her phone face down on the table and went back to what she was doing. There was no reply. No explanation. No closure offered. She had already given herself that. Kojo waited. Minutes turned into hours. Hours into days. But silence was the only answer he received. For the first time, he felt what it was like to speak into a space where he no longer mattered. Ebony's life continued without interruption. She met deadlines. She walked by the ocean. She planned for the future. The version of her that once needed his validation was gone. Sometimes late at night, she reflected on how close she came to letting that moment define her. How easy it would have been to shrink, to hide, to believe his words. But she didn't. She chose herself instead. And that choice changed everything. Her story didn't end at the altar. It began there. The lesson was simple and clear, carried quietly but powerfully in her heart. He tried to break me in public. I rebuilt myself where he couldn't reach.